Before we dive into this latest sci-fi epic, drop a quick hi in the comments. It may seem small, but trust me, it really helps YouTube share this story with more sci fans like us. I'd love to see who's watching.
The silence that followed the battle for Xylos Prime Sector Gamma felt heavier, more suffocating, than the roaring crescendo of violence that had preceded it. Dust, thick as powdered ochre, swirled in the alien sunlight filtering through rents in the skeletal remains of the K'tharr Administrative Spire XC-7. It coated Sergeant Eva Rostova's Mk-7 powered armor, muting the Terran Mandate's deep blue insignia on her shoulder pauldron. Each breath rasped through her helmet's filters, tasting of ozone, burned metal, and something indefinably alien, the scent of Xylos itself. Her squad, 2nd Squad of 3rd Platoon, callsign Reapers, moved through the devastation, with the grim efficiency born of months fighting the K'tharr Hegemony across half a dozen contested worlds. They were ghosts in the graveyard of an enemy's ambition. Clear left, Corporal Jian Li's voice, habitually calm even under fire, sounded unnaturally loud in the relative quiet over the encrypted squad comms. His integrated bioscanner swept methodically across heaps of rubble, searching for lingering heat signatures, faint heartbeats, anything that deviated from the cold embrace of death and destruction. Clear right, echoed Private Marcus Grizz Jones, his massive frame seemingly fused with the heavy M99 plasma repeater he wielded. Its cooling vanes still clicked sporadically, a reminder of the fury it had unleashed moments, or was it hours, ago. Grizz didn't like silence, it made him jumpy. He preferred the unambiguous clarity of combat. Beside Rostova, Private Anya Sharma adjusted the gain on her comms unit, her gloved fingers dancing over the console integrated into her forearm plate. Command confirms Sector Gamma secure, Sarge. Sweep and clear protocol remains in effect. Report any anomalies. Sharma was the youngest in the squad, barely 20 standard years old, but her technical proficiency was unmatched. Sometimes, Rostova saw the raw horror of this war reflected in the private's wide eyes behind her visor, a stark contrast to the weary acceptance in Li's, or the simmering anger in Grizz. Bringing up the rear, Corporal Ben Carter moved with a fluid grace that belied his armor's bulk. Carter was their scout, their eyes and ears, a man of few words, but uncanny observational skills. He paused, tilting his helmet. Movement, he whispered over the comm, no, structural stress. This whole place is coming down. Acknowledged, Carter. Keep it tight, Rostova ordered. Let's check the central core structure, and head back to the rally point. I want to be wheels up before Xylos' primary sets fully. The notoriously corrosive twilight storms of this planet were not something she wanted to experience outside the FOB's shielding. They advanced deeper, boots crunching on shattered data slates inscribed with the K'tharr's complex, flowing script. Evidence of the spire's former purpose was everywhere: overturned consoles, fragmented holographic projectors displaying dead static, alcoves filled with pulverized artifacts that might have been art or religious icons. Rostova felt a familiar pang, not of sympathy for the K'tharr, but of weariness at the endless cycle of destruction. They built, humans destroyed. Humans built, they destroyed. When did it end? It was Li, again, who broke the rhythm. He stopped abruptly near a section where an internal ferroplascrete wall had buckled inwards, likely from a direct hit by a marine rocket. Sarge, hold up. Got something. His voice held a different note this time, not alarm, but uncertainty. Biosignature. Faint. Non-human. K'tharr. Instantly, the squad formed a security perimeter. Grizz swung his repeater towards the collapsed wall, the weapon humming as its charge coils powered up. Carter melted into the shadows nearby, rifle scanning the upper levels. Sharma monitored local comms frequencies for any K'tharr signals. Rostova moved to Li's side. Hostile, she asked, her own pulse rifle raised. Negative, Sarge. Readings are critical, Lee replied, kneeling carefully. He activated his helmet's external floodlight, cutting through the gloom beneath the debris. Multiple traumatic injuries. Life signs fading fast. Rostova peered into the cavity revealed by the light. Partially pinned beneath heavy slabs of plascrete and twisted support beams lay a K'tharr. Female, Rostova noted with detached tactical assessment the lighter frame, the more intricate scale patterns shimmering faintly even through layers of dust and dark, violet blood. Her species vaguely resembled the great hunting cats of old Earth, if those cats had evolved 4 arms, scales, digitigrade legs, and faces that blended feline grace with reptilian coldness. This one's olive-green scales were marred by scorches and deep gashes. One upper arm was a mangled ruin. Her chest plate, fashioned from some K'tharr alloy, was cracked like porcelain, revealing the extent of the plasma burns beneath. A discarded K'tharr pulse rifle lay inches from her remaining functional upper hand. Her multifaceted eyes, slitted vertically like a viper's, fluttered open. They locked onto Rostova's helmet visor. There was no aggression in them, only a raw, primal terror mixed with agony. A low, rattling hiss, punctuated by a pained whimper, escaped her fanged jaws. Gris shifted his weight, the servos in his armor whining softly. Enemy combatant, Sarge. Wounded. His meaning was brutally clear. SOP in a hot zone, especially against an enemy known for giving no quarter, was termination to prevent future threats and conserve resources. The K'tharr rarely took human prisoners, and when they did, Rostova pushed the thought away. One less snake to worry about, Gris added, his voice a low growl. Rostova knew he was thinking of Private Jenkins, dragged screaming into a K'tharr tunnel network on Cygnus X4, and Corporal Davies, whose mutilated body they'd recovered after the battle for Kepler Station. Gris had been there for both. His hatred for the K'tharr was visceral, personal. Rostova stared down at the trapped alien. Her training screamed threat elimination. Her memory screamed Jenkins and Davies. The pragmatic part of her brain calculated the risks, the resources needed, the potential complications. But something else stirred within her, something older and perhaps more fundamental. The K'tharr warrior was helpless, dying, her reptilian eyes wide with pain and fear, not malice. She looked small. Status, Lee? Rostova asked, keeping her voice level. Lee ran his scanner again. Severe internal bleeding, Class 3 plasma burns, compound fractures. Sarge, she's got maybe 10, 15 minutes without intervention. Even then. He trailed off. Then let her go out, Gris insisted. It's kinder than what her buddies would do to us. Rostova made the decision. It felt less like a choice and more like an inevitability, a line she refused to cross. Negative, Gris, she stated, her voice echoing slightly inside her helmet. The authority in it was absolute, cutting off any further argument before it began. She's incapacitated. Non-combatant status applies under Terran Mandate War Code, Article 12, Section 3. Gris stiffened but didn't argue further. He knew that tone. He might hate it, but he wouldn't disobey a direct order under fire, or even after. Sarge, Sharma chimed in tentatively, Article 12 pertains to surrendered or clearly non-threatening individuals. She still has her sidearm nearby. She's pinned, unarmed effectively, and dying, Sharma, Rostova countered, her gaze still locked with the K'tharrs. She poses zero threat. Our mandate isn't just about prosecuting war, it's about upholding our principles while doing so. Especially when it's hard. Lee, get your kit out. Stabilize her. Lee nodded, already moving. He unsealed compartments on his armor, revealing the tools of his trade, sterile field dressings, biofoam injectors, coagulants, pain suppressors, a multispectrum diagnostic tool. Her physiology is drastically different, Sarge. Cellular structure, circulatory system. I'll cross-reference with the Xenom database, but standard human treatments might be ineffective, even harmful. Do your best, Corporal, Rostova said. Focus on stopping the bleeding and managing the pain. Keep her alive. She holstered her rifle and knelt cautiously beside Lee, deliberately keeping her movements slow and non-threatening. Looking directly at the K'tharr, she spoke softly, pitching her voice low. Easy now. We are trying to help. The words were meaningless to the alien, but the tone, the intent, might bridge the gap. The K'tharr female, Lyra Xa, as Rostova would later learn her designation translated roughly, flinched violently as Lee approached with a wide-field antiseptic spray. She hissed again, a sound thick with pain and fear, straining against the debris pinning her. Hold still, Lee murmured, more to himself than the patient. He worked quickly, efficiently. Applying a spray-on coagulant field to the worst lacerations, the substance forming a rubbery, translucent seal. Then came the biofoam, expanding gently into the gaps of her cracked armor to stabilize fractures and exert pressure on internal bleeding points. Finally, a cautious injection from a multi-dose pen. Broad-spectrum analgesic and anti-shock, he explained to Rostova. Dialed way down, cross-referenced for K'tharr baseline metabolism from the battle intel database. Hope it doesn't trigger an allergic reaction. They watched, tense, as the drug took effect. The K'thar's frantic movements ceased. Her rapid, shallow breathing eased slightly, becoming deeper, more regular, though still ragged. The terror in her eyes faded, replaced by a hazy confusion, then a slow drift towards unconsciousness. Okay, Lee breathed, relief evident in his voice. She's stabilized, for now. Vitals are holding, just barely. Pain seems managed. He ran his scanner again. But Sarge, she needs intensive care. Nanosurgery for the internal damage, organ support, maybe synthetic blood substitutes. This is way beyond field triage. Understood. Rostova stood up, her mind already racing ahead. This changed everything. All right, Reapers. Mission update. We are no longer just sweeping and clearing. We have a casualty evacuation. Priority Alpha. Grizz actually turned his head, visor meeting hers. A K'tharr casualty, Sarge? Extraction. Command is gonna dash. Command will be informed once we reach the rally point, Rostova cut him off. My decision, my responsibility. Carter, find us the safest, quickest route out of this rubble heap back towards extraction point Delta. Sharma, prep a secure channel to request medevac, specify xenobiological casualty, condition critical but stable. Lee, you're on patient monitoring. Grizz, you help Lee rig a temporary stretcher and then take point. Move with purpose, people. The clock is ticking on her, and on that daylight. Grizz let out a heavy sigh, audible over the comms, a sound like grinding gears. But he didn't protest further. He lumbered over to help Lee, who was already eyeing salvageable planks and straps. Carter nodded silently and melted back into the ruins, his HUD overlaying structural integrity scans onto his view. Sharma began inputting the complex encryption protocols for a priority medical request. Rostova took one last look at the unconscious K'tharr female. Lyra Xa. Helping her felt strangely right, even amidst the strategic absurdity. It was a small act of defiance against the overwhelming brutality of the war. An affirmation, perhaps, that humanity was more than just its capacity for destruction. Whether that affirmation would get them all killed remained to be seen. Let's move, she ordered. Reapers out. Extracting themselves and their unexpected patient from the skeletal remains of Spire XC7 proved more challenging than Rostova had anticipated. K'tharr, ever the pragmatist, led them on a winding path that avoided the most obviously unstable sections, but the entire structure groaned and shifted around them like a dying beast. Dust rained down constantly, and twice they had to backtrack when load-bearing columns, weakened by plasma fire, gave way with deafening roars, sending cascades of ferrocrete plummeting into the lower levels. Lee and Gries had fashioned a makeshift stretcher from a sturdy door panel and cargo straps. Lyra XA, unconscious but occasionally moaning softly, was secured as gently as possible. Moving her required careful coordination, especially through narrow gaps or over treacherous piles of debris. Gries, despite his vocal opposition, handled his side of the stretcher with surprising care, his massive strength allowing him to navigate obstacles that would have stopped a lesser man. Yet, his silence was sullen, radiating disapproval. "Anything on comms, Sharma?" Rostova asked, pausing as K'tharr scouted ahead around a blind corner. "Negative, Sarge," Sharma replied, her voice tight. "Still heavy interference from the Spire's damaged core. Can't get a clean signal out for the medevac request. Might have to wait until we are clear of the main structure." "Understood. Keep trying." Rostova checked her chrono. They were losing time. Xylos's primary sun, a bloated orange giant, was sinking lower, painting the ruins in hues of blood and rust. The air temperature was dropping rapidly, and the wind whistling through the shattered spire carried a distinct, biting chill. Lee knelt beside the stretcher, running his scanner over Lyra XA. "Vitals dipping slightly, Sarge. Hypothermia might be setting in. Her species isn't adapted to these temperature swings like we are with our internal suit regulators. And that analgesic is wearing off. Can you give her another dose?" "Risky. Stacking non-native medications. I can try a thermal blanket salvaged from an emergency kit, but it won't do much against this cold without external power." Lee pulled out a thin, foil-like sheet and carefully draped it over the K'tharr, tucking it around her body. Lyra XA stirred, letting out a low hiss, her eyes flickering open for a moment, glazed with pain and disorientation, before closing again. "Just keep monitoring," Rostova said, frustration gnawing at her. They were exposed, moving slowly, communications were down, and their patient was deteriorating. This was rapidly turning into a textbook example of how missions go sideways. "Contact." Carter's voice was sharp, urgent, cutting through the comms. "Ahead. K'tharr patrol. 3, maybe 4 individuals. Moving parallel to our position, lower level. They haven't seen us." Instinct took over. "Down. Silent running." Rostova ordered, dropping into a crouch behind a shattered console. The rest of the squad froze, melting into the available cover. Gries carefully lowered his end of the stretcher, Lee shielding Lyra XA's body with his own. They were on a mezzanine level overlooking a wider concourse below, littered with debris. Through a gap in the ruined railing, Rostova could see them 4 K'tharr warriors, moving cautiously through the rubble below, their pulse rifles held ready. They wore standard infantry armor, less damaged than Lyra XA's, their scaled heads swiveling, scanning the area. Were they looking for survivors? For her? Silence stretched, broken only by the wind and the distant groans of the dying spire. Rostova held her breath, tracking the K'tharr patrol's progress. They seemed to be following a predetermined path, likely part of the same sweep and clear operation, just on a different vector. Then, disaster nearly struck. Lyra XA, perhaps reacting to a spike of pain as the drugs wore off, let out a sharp, gasping hiss. It echoed unnaturally in the tense silence. Below, the K'tharr patrol froze instantly. Their heads snapped up, multifaceted eyes scanning the mezzanine level. One of them pointed directly towards the squad's hiding place. Another raised its rifle. Compromised, K'tharr breathed. Gryz instinctively tightened his grip on his plasma repeater. Engage. Rostova's mind raced. 4 K'tharr against 5 Marines, usually favorable odds. But they were encumbered with a casualty, low on ammo after the main battle, and revealing their position could draw more enemies. Plus, a firefight here could bring the whole damn level down on top of them. Negative, she commanded sharply. Hold fire. Stay hidden. They haven't pinpointed us yet. One of the K'tharr below barked a command in their guttural language. 2 of them began moving towards a collapsed ramp that led up to the mezzanine, while the other 2 provided cover. Rostova risked a glance at Lyra Xa. Her eyes were open again, wide with alarm. She seemed to understand the danger her sound had caused. Her gaze met Rostova's, a complex mix of fear and something else. Apology. Recognition of shared peril. Lee subtly shifted, placing a hand gently but firmly over Lyra Xa's snout, ready to muffle any further sounds. She didn't resist, her eyes fixed on the approaching danger below. The 2 K'tharr reached the base of the ramp. They scanned the debris field above, searching for the source of the noise. For agonizing seconds, nothing happened. Then, a large chunk of ferrocrete dislodged itself from the ceiling high above, crashing down onto the concourse near the ramp with a thunderous boom, sending up a plume of dust. Startled, the 2 K'tharr flattened themselves, rifles aimed at the new disturbance. The leader below barked another command. After a tense moment, seemingly deciding the noise was just the building settling or residual battle damage, the leader waved the 2 back down the ramp. They regrouped, exchanged a few sharp sentences in their own tongue, and then, to Rostova's immense relief, continued on their original path, disappearing around a bend in the concourse. Only when their footsteps faded did Rostova allow herself to exhale. Status? Clear, K'tharr reported. They are gone. That was too close, Sharma murmured, her voice shaky. Lee removed his hand from Lyra Xa's snout. The K'tharr blinked, her breathing still shallow. Her heart rate spiked, Lee noted. She knew. Gryz grunted. Nearly got us all killed. But there was less venom in his tone than before. Perhaps seeing the K'tharr equally terrified, equally vulnerable, had chipped away slightly at his monolithic hatred. Or perhaps it was just the shared danger. Let's move, Rostova urged. We need to get clear of this structure before our luck runs out entirely. They resumed their slow, careful progress. The near encounter had sharpened their senses, heightened the tension. Every shadow seemed menacing, every creak of stressed metal a potential threat. They finally emerged from the main spire structure onto a wide, debris-strewn plaza, as the last sliver of Xylos' primary sun dipped below the jagged horizon, plunging the landscape into a deep, chilling twilight. The wind picked up immediately, howling through the skeletal buildings, carrying stinging particles of dust and ice. The infamous Xylos twilight storms were beginning. Sharma, try comms again. Rostova shouted over the wind's roar. Sharma shielded her console, fingers flying. Getting something, weak signal. Command, this is Reaper Actual, requesting immediate medevac, extraction point Delta. 1 casualty, xenobiological, K'tharr female, condition critical but stable. Repeat, K'tharr female casualty. How copy? Static crackled back, then a clipped voice, heavily distorted. Reaper Actual, say again. K'tharr, confirm K'tharr casualty. Affirmative, command, Sharma yelled into her MIC, repeat, affirmative. K'tharr female, wounded, stabilized. Requesting extraction. Another burst of static, then, Reaper actual, orders are secure the, do not, repeat, do not render aid, terminate, acknowledge. The signal dissolved into static again. A heavy silence fell over the squad, heavier than the wind. Terminate. The order was clear, overriding Rostova's invocation of Article 12. Command likely saw it as too risky, a waste of resources, or perhaps feared some kind of K'tharr deception. Grizz looked at Rostova, his expression unreadable behind his visor. Carter stood motionless. Lee glanced down at the shivering K'tharr on the stretcher, then back at his sergeant. Sharma looked horrified. Sarge? Sharma asked hesitantly. Did you copy that? Rostova felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. She had given her word, implicitly, when she ordered Lee to save the alien. She had invoked the mandate. Now, command was ordering her to violate that principle, to execute a helpless, wounded enemy she had just saved. She looked at Lyra Xa, shivering under the inadequate thermal blanket, her multifaceted eyes half closed against the stinging wind. She thought about the K'tharr patrol, how close they had come. She thought about the risks they were taking, the dwindling light, the failing comms, the approaching storm. And she thought about what it meant to be human, or at least, the kind of human she wanted herself and her squad to be. Negative, Sharma, Rostova said, her voice ringing with conviction, cutting through the wind's howl. Comms interference. Transmission garbled. We did not receive clear orders. She met Grizz's gaze. Our mission remains unchanged. Casualty evacuation. Priority Alpha. Sharma blinked, then a slow nod of understanding. Lee gave a small, almost imperceptible sigh of relief. Carter remained impassive, but Rostova thought she detected a flicker of approval in his stance. Grizz hesitated for a long moment, the wind whipping around his massive frame. Then, he spat on the ground, a gesture of contempt, but for whom, Rostova couldn't be sure. He hefted his end of the stretcher. Delta Point is 2 clicks east, Carter reported, pointing through the gloom. Across open ground, then through the old commercial district ruins. Then let's move before this storm gets worse or command finds a clearer frequency, Rostova ordered. Double time. They pushed forward into the gathering storm, 5 Marines and their unlikely burden, defying the wind, the cold, the enemy, and now, potentially, their own command structure. The weight of Rostova's decision settled upon her, heavy as her armor, cold as the Xylos night. The trek across the open plaza towards the skeletal remains of the commercial district was brutal. The wind howled like a banshee, driving icy particles that scoured their armor and reduced visibility to mere meters. Their helmet lamps cut feeble cones through the swirling ochre dust, magnifying the sense of isolation. The temperature plummeted, making the servos in their armor whine in protest. Lyra Xa was shivering violently now, despite the thermal blanket. Lee had managed to administer another, smaller dose of analgesic, but he was reluctant to do more. He kept a constant eye on her vitals via his scanner, his brow furrowed with worry behind his visor. Sarge, her core temperature is dropping dangerously low, Lee reported, his voice strained against the wind. The blanket isn't enough. If we don't get her somewhere warmer soon. How far, Carter? Rostova shouted. 500 meters to the first structures. They should offer some shelter. Carter yelled back, leaning into the wind. They pressed on, heads down, battling for every step. The open ground offered no cover, making them feel horribly exposed. Every flicker of static on the comms made Rostova jump, expecting a clearer, angrier voice from command demanding confirmation of the termination order. But only the wind answered. Suddenly, Lyra Xa began to thrash weakly on the stretcher, letting out a series of sharp, pained hisses. What is it, Lee? Rostova demanded, stopping the squad. Lee quickly scanned her. Pain spike. Severe abdominal, weight. Something's wrong with the biofoam application point near her lower torso. It's degrading. Reacting badly. Before Lee could investigate further, Lyra XA cried out again, a higher-pitched sound of sheer agony, and arched her back. Dark, viscous fluid K'tharr blood suddenly bloomed on the thermal blanket, spreading rapidly from beneath her armor. Damn it! The coagulant failed. Internal pressure must have ruptured something. Lee scrambled to open his medkit again, fumbling with cold-numbed fingers. Need to reapply pressure, maybe try a surgical clamp if I can see the bleeder, but visibility is nil. Grease, Carter, perimeter. Sharma, light. Rostova ordered. Sharma angled her helmet lamp down, adding its beam to Lee's, illuminating the desperate scene. Lee ripped away the blood-soaked blanket and part of Lyra XA's shattered chest plate, exposing the wound more fully. It was a mess of damaged tissue and dark, pulsing blood. Lyra XA's eyes were wide with pain, her breathing coming in ragged gasps. Can you stop it? Rostova asked urgently. Trying. But the cold is making the tissues brittle, hard to work with. And this bleeding is arterial. Lee applied direct pressure with a field dressing, which quickly soaked through. He fumbled for a clamp. As Lee worked frantically, Lyra XA's gaze locked onto Rostova again. She hissed something, low and urgent, then deliberately, painfully, lifted her one functional upper hand and pointed weakly towards a specific pouch on her own damaged belt. A pouch Lee and Rostova hadn't searched. Rostova hesitated for only a second. Trusting an enemy. But the desperation in the alien's eyes was undeniable. Lee, check that pouch, she indicated. Lee, his hands covered in alien blood, looked up, confused, then followed Lyra XA's gesture. He carefully opened the tough, leathery pouch. Inside were several small, metallic cylinders. They looked nothing like human medical supplies. What is this stuff? Lee muttered, picking one up. Lyra XA hissed again, weaker this time, and tapped the cylinder, then pointed insistently at her wound. She wants you to use it, Rostova interpreted, making another split-second decision. Do it, Lee. We are out of options. Lee looked at the strange cylinder, then at the rapidly deteriorating K'tharr. This could kill her faster than the bleeding, Sarge. Xenomd protocols are irrelevant if she bleeds out in the next 60 seconds, Rostova snapped. Use it. Taking a deep breath, Lee examined the cylinder. It had a simple pressure-activated stud at one end. Mimicking the application method of human biofoam, he pressed the stud end against the edges of the horrifying wound. There was a soft hiss as gas escaped, and a shimmering, faintly phosphorescent blue gel extruded from the cylinder, flowing over and into the wound. Instantly, the bleeding slowed, then stopped almost completely. The gel solidified slightly, forming a flexible, translucent seal that pulsed with a faint blue light. Lyra XA gasped, her body going limp, but her breathing deepened, becoming less strained. Lee ran his scanner, his eyes widening behind his visor. Incredible. Vitals stabilizing. Bleeding stopped. The gel, it seems to be adhering selectively to the damaged tissue, forming a microvascular scaffold while applying localized pressure and releasing some kind of stimulant. Her own species tech. Far more advanced than our field dressings for their physiology. Good guess, trusting her, Carter remarked quietly from the perimeter. Rostova looked at Lyra XA, who blinked slowly, her gaze lucid again, though filled with exhaustion. A silent acknowledgement passed between them, alien and human, a moment of shared survival against the odds. Okay, Rostova said, relief washing over her Let's get her and us out of this wind. Move. They finally reached the edge of the ruined commercial district, a maze of collapsed storefronts, shattered plazas, and dark alleyways. K'tharr found a relatively intact structure, perhaps a former luxury goods store judging by the broken display cases, that offered shelter from the main force of the wind. They carried Lyra XA inside, setting the stretcher down gently on the floor, which was surprisingly clear of debris in one corner. The relative quiet inside the structure was a welcome respite. The wind still moaned outside, but its teeth were blunted. Lee immediately set about making Lyra XA more comfortable, checking the alien medical device, wrapping her in 2 thermal blankets now. Her shivering subsided slightly. "Okay, team, listen up," Rostova said, calling the squad close. "We hold here until the worst of the storm passes. K'tharr, find defensible positions covering the entrances. Grizz, secure the rear. Sharma, keep trying those comms, low power, burst transmissions only. Lee, stay with the patient. Everyone hydrate and check your ammo." As the others moved to their tasks, Rostova approached the stretcher. Lyra XA watched her, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the faint blue glow from the K'tharr medical device on her wound. "Why?" The voice startled Rostova. It wasn't human. It came directly into her mind, a low, resonant mental whisper, slightly distorted, like listening to a radio station through static. It wasn't spoken language, but pure concept, translated imperfectly by whatever allowed the contact. Rostova instinctively checked her helmet systems. No external transmission detected. She looked down at Lyra XA. The K'thar's eyes were focused intently on her. "You heard." The mental voice was weaker now, tinged with surprise and effort. Rostova focused her own thoughts, trying to project clarity. "Yes. I hear you. Is this telepathy? Weak? Fading? Only close, strong emotion, pain, fear, helps." Lyra XA projected. "Why save me? Enemy." Rostova crouched beside the stretcher, keeping her movements slow. How to explain Article 12, Section 3, the Terran Mandate, the concept of mercy, to an alien mind through rudimentary telepathy while her squad mates stood guard nearby? "You were wounded. Helpless." Rostova projected the concept simply. "My laws, my code, say we do not kill helpless enemies. We offer aid." There was a long pause, filled only by the wind outside and Lee's quiet movements, as he checked Lyra XA's restraints. "Your code?" Lyra XA questioned, the concept tinged with disbelief. "K'tharr code, honor in battle. Victory, or death. Weakness, invites death." "Our code is different," Rostova projected firmly. "Life has value. Even an enemy's life, when the fight is over." "Your soldiers wanted death for me," Lyra XA sent, projecting the memory of Grizz's earlier hostility. "One soldier. He has seen much death. Caused by your people." Rostova projected carefully, not wanting to antagonize, but needing to be honest. "But our laws are stronger than one soldier's anger." "Lies?" The projection was sharp, distrustful. "Humans destroy worlds. Kill indiscriminately. We fight to survive your expansion." Rostova felt a familiar weariness. The K'tharr perspective. Was it true? From their side, perhaps it felt that way. Human expansion had been rapid, sometimes ruthless. But the K'tharr themselves had initiated this latest conflict, attacking human colonies without warning. "This war is complex," Rostova projected back. "But my actions now, saving you, are not lies. They are my code." Lyra XA was silent again, her multifaceted eyes studying Rostova's visor intently, as if trying to see the face behind it. The faint blue light from her wound pulsed rhythmically. "Command, your leaders, ordered, termination." Lyra XA projected suddenly, sending a jolt through Rostova. How had she known? Had she somehow picked up Sharma's transmission, or the ensuing tension? Rostova hesitated. Lying felt wrong, pointless. Yes. The order came. Signal was unclear. A half-truth. "But you disobey. For me. Enemy?" The alien's mental voice was filled with profound confusion, perhaps a flicker of something akin to awe. "I follow my code," Rostova projected, simplifying the complex chain of command, ethics, and personal conviction. "And my code dictated aid." Before Lyra XA could respond, Lee spoke up, his actual voice cutting through the mental conversation. "Sarge, she's burning up. Temperature's spiking again. That K'tharr med gel stopped the bleeding, but I think she's developing a systemic infection from the initial injuries." Rostova immediately switched back to squad leader mode. Options: need broad-spectrum antibiotics, tailored to her physiology if possible. My kit is limited. The autodoc back at the FOB could synthesize something, but out here. Lee shook his head. And I need fluids to combat the fever, but standard saline could cause asthmatic shock. Rostova looked down at Lyra XA, whose breathing was becoming shallow again, her skin feeling hot even through Rostova's glove. The K'tharr medical device was a miracle for trauma, but it couldn't fight infection. Then, Lyra XA projected again, her thought voice strained. "Pouch, other side, small flask, clear liquid." Rostova looked at Lee, who immediately checked the other side of Lyra XA's belt. He found a small, flat flask made of a dark, resilient material. It contained a clear, slightly viscous liquid. "Our field hydration, nutrient supplement, compatible," Lyra XA projected weakly. "Helps fight fever, infection, some." Lee looked at Rostova, holding the flask. "Sarge? Twice in one night." Rostova nodded. "Seems she wants to live. And maybe she trusts us just enough not to poison herself. Administer it carefully, monitor closely." As Lee carefully uncapped the flask and prepared a Field 4 drip line, Rostova felt the strangeness of the situation wash over her again. Huddled in a ruined alien shop, sheltering from a deadly storm, disobeying direct orders, relying on an enemy combatant's own medical supplies and limited telepathic instructions to keep her alive. Nothing in her Terran Mandate training had prepared her for this. Why? Lyra XA projected again, the question weaker, but more insistent now. Why risk everything for one K'tharr warrior? Rostova looked from the alien, fighting for life on the stretcher, to her squad, holding the perimeter in the dark, trusting her judgment. Because sometimes, Rostova projected back, hoping the concept translated, doing the right thing is the only thing that matters. Even in war. Maybe especially in war. The alien fell silent, absorbing the thought, or perhaps just succumbing to fevered exhaustion. Outside, the wind howled, but inside the small shelter, a fragile, unspoken truce held against the storm. The storm raged for another 2 hours, pinning them down in the ruined store. Lee managed to administer the K'tharr nutrient fluid via a jury-rigged 4, and Lyra XA's fever seemed to stabilize, though she remained weak, drifting in and out of consciousness. The telepathic contact ceased as her strength waned. The squad used the time to rest in shifts, clean weapons, and redistribute remaining ammo and power cells. Grizz remained mostly silent, observing Lee tend to the alien, his expression unreadable. Sharma managed to get another brief, garbled transmission out, simply reporting their position and intention to proceed to Delta Point once the storm broke, making no mention of the casualties status or the previous order. K'tharr maintained his silent vigil, occasionally reporting structural groans or debris falls nearby. Finally, the wind began to abate, the punishing curtain of dust thinning. Through gaps in the ruined walls, they could see the first hints of Xylos's twin moons appearing through the breaking clouds, casting an eerie, silvery light over the devastated landscape. Storms breaking, Sarge, K'tharr reported. Visibility improving. All right, Reapers, Rostova ordered, getting to her feet. Saddle up. Lee, how's the patient? Weak, but holding steady. The fluid helped. That K'tharr tech is keeping the major wound closed. She's tougher than she looks. Let's hope she's tough enough for the last click. Rostova nodded to Grizz and Lee, get her ready to move. They carefully lifted the stretcher again. Lyra XA was conscious, her multifaceted eyes following their movements with weary alertness. As Grizz took his position, his armored glove brushed against her remaining functional hand. She didn't flinch away this time. For a moment, their gazes met the hulking human marine filled with simmering resentment, and the wounded alien warrior clinging to life. Something unspoken passed between them, not understanding, perhaps, but a mutual acknowledgement of shared hardship. Grizz gave a curt nod, almost imperceptible, before turning his attention forward. Moving through the ruined commercial district was faster now, with better visibility, but still nerve-wracking. Shattered display windows gaped like empty eyes, alleys held deep shadows, and the silence felt watchful. K'tharr scouted ahead, marking the path, while Grizz and Lee carried the stretcher, Sharma covering the rear, and Rostova moving fluidly between positions, scanning constantly. Extraction Point Delta was supposed to be a small, relatively secure landing pad on the roof of a pre-war logistics hub, designated for emergency personnel pickups. As they approached the building, a hulking ferrocrete structure less damaged than the surrounding spire, Sharma suddenly held up a hand. Sarge, I'm picking up encrypted signals. Short range. Human military band. Friendlies? Rostova asked, hope flaring. The medevac? Maybe, Sharma said, frowning at her console. But the encryption handshake, it's not. Standard medevac protocol. It's command channel. High priority. A cold dread seeped back into Rostova. Anyone else? Negative. No K'tharr signals nearby. Just the human transmission, originating from the roof of that building Extraction Point Delta. This wasn't right. A high-priority command channel signal at an emergency extraction point, right after they'd seemingly ignored an order. It smelled like a trap, or at least, an internal affairs issue waiting to happen. K'tharr, Rostova said quietly over the private channel. Get up there. Visual confirmation. Silent approach. Report status. Copy, Sarge. K'tharr detached from the group, activating his armor's chameleon field, and melted into the shadows, beginning a circuitous climb up the building's damaged exterior fire escape. The rest of the squad took cover in the entrance of a collapsed parking structure across from the logistics hub, waiting, tension mounting. Lee checked Lyra XA again. She watched them, seeming to sense the shift in atmosphere. Minutes crawled by. Finally, K'tharr's voice came over the private channel, barely a whisper. Sarge, I have eyes on one transport shuttle, looks like a Condor-class dropship, powered down but ready. 4 figures on the roof near the pad. Marines? Affirmative. Power armor, standard issue. But they are not Medcorps. Their insignia. Provost Marshal markings. Military police. Rostova's blood ran cold. MPs. Not a medevac team. Not regular infantry providing security. Military police waiting at their extraction point. This wasn't a rescue. It was an intercept. Command hadn't ignored their garbled transmission, they'd dispatched internal affairs. Are they expecting us? Rostova asked. Looks like it. Positioned facing this direction. Heavy weapons deployed. They are waiting. Casualty status visible. Negative. They can't see the stretcher from here. Rostova swore under her breath. They were caught. Walking up there meant facing disciplinary action, potentially charges of disobeying a direct order, in a combat zone, a court-martial offense. Her career, and potentially her freedom and that of her squad who followed her lead, were on the line. But abandoning Lyra XA now, leaving her to die after everything they'd been through, felt utterly unthinkable. Options, Sarge? Sharma asked quietly, having overheard the private comm chatter on the squad network. Rostova looked at her team. Gris stood stoically, his hand resting on his repeater. Lee anxiously checked Lyra XA's vitals. Sharma watched her commander, trust and fear warring in her eyes. K'tharr waited silently for orders from his perch. And on the stretcher, Lyra XA watched them all, her alien face unreadable, but her eyes intelligent, aware. We proceed, Rostova said firmly. We have a casualty requiring immediate medical attention. That's our priority. We stick to our story. Comms were garbled, last clear orders were to secure the sector and handle any contingencies. We found a critically wounded K'tharr, Article 12 applied, we stabilized and evacuated. They won't buy it, Sarge, Gris rumbled. MPs aren't known for their flexibility. Maybe not, Rostova conceded. But it's the truth, near enough. And it's the principle we stand on. K'tharr, maintain overwatch, but do not engage unless fired upon. Everyone else, follow me. Keep the stretcher shielded. Move like we belong here. Taking a deep breath, Rostova stepped out of cover, waving the squad forward. They moved. Across the last 50 meters to the logistics hub's main entrance, their heavy boots echoing in the sudden quiet. They entered the building, finding the main lifts predictably offline. K'tharr guided them via comms to a service stairway. The climb was arduous, especially for Lee and Gris carrying the stretcher. Lyra XA remained silent, enduring the jolting journey. As they neared the roof access door, Rostova signaled a halt. K'tharr, status? MPs haven't moved. They've seen us enter the building, likely tracking us via internal sensors. They are waiting by the door. All right. Rostova addressed the squad over the comms. Helmets on, full comm discipline. Let me do the talking. Remember the story. Stay calm. She pushed open the heavy rooftop access door and stepped out into the cold, moonlit air. 4 figures in marine power armor turned towards them instantly, weapons held at the ready, but not directly aimed. Their armor was clean, unmarked by recent combat, and bore the stark black and white insignia of the Provost Marshal's office. One figure, clearly the leader judging by the subtle rank markings on his helmet, stepped forward. His visor was polarized, hiding his face. Sergeant Rostova, the MP sergeant's voice was amplified, cold and impersonal. Affirmative, Rostova replied, stepping fully onto the roof, her squad fanning out slightly behind her, the stretcher still partially obscured. Second squad, 3rd platoon. Reporting mission complete. Sector Gamma secure. We received your transmission, Sergeant, the MP said, ignoring her report. Regarding a casualty. Yes, Sergeant. We located a critically wounded K'tharr combatant during our sweep. Stabilized according to Mandate protocols, Article 12. Evacuating for medical treatment and intelligence processing. Rostova kept her tone professional, matter-of-fact. The MP sergeant took a slow step closer, his helmet tilting as he tried to get a clear view of the stretcher behind Rostova and Gryz. Our orders regarding encountered K'tharr wounded were specific, Sergeant Rostova. Confirmation was requested regarding termination. We experienced severe communications interference within the spire structure, and during the subsequent storm, Sergeant Rostova stated evenly. Final confirmed orders were sweep and clear, handle contingencies. This was a contingency. The MP sergeant was silent for a moment. Rostova could almost feel him weighing her words, comparing them against the report he'd likely received from command. Step aside, Sergeant. Allow us to inspect the casualty. Rostova hesitated. This was the critical moment. She exchanged a quick glance with Gryz. Then, slowly, deliberately, they shifted, revealing Lyra Xa on the stretcher. The four MPs visibly stiffened. Seeing the living, breathing K'tharr warrior, clearly under human care, with the makeshift fore and thermal blankets, seemed to solidify their suspicions. Sergeant Rostova, the MP leader said, his voice dangerously low. You were given a direct order, confirmed received by your communications specialist, to terminate this hostile. My comms specialist reported garbled transmission, Rostova repeated, meeting the MP's polarized visor without flinching. My interpretation of standing orders under Article 12 dictated rendering aid to an incapacitated non-threat. Your interpretation is irrelevant, the MP snapped. You have disobeyed a lawful order during wartime. You and your squad are hereby relieved of duty and placed under preliminary arrest pending formal charges. He gestured to his men. Secure the prisoner and detain these Marines. Two MPs started forward, raising magnetic binders. Gryz tensed, his hand tightening on his repeater. Carter, still hidden, likely had his rifle trained on the MP leader. Sharma gasped. Lee instinctively shielded Lyra Xa. Rostova held up a hand. Stand down, Reapers, she ordered firmly. Then, she addressed the MP sergeant. Sergeant, arresting my squad here serves no purpose. We need to get this K'tharr to proper medical facilities immediately. She may possess valuable intelligence. She possesses intelligence. We were ordered to deny the enemy by terminating her, the MP countered. She is evidence of your insubordination. Suddenly, a weak mental voice echoed in Rostova's mind, but also, somehow, seemed to touch the minds of everyone on the rooftop, human and K'tharr alike. Wait! Everyone froze. The MP sergeant staggered back a step. What was that? Lyra Xa, using what little strength she had left, pushed herself up slightly on her good elbow. She looked directly at the MP sergeant, her multifaceted eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. You seek information. Her projected thought was weak, strained, but clear. About Vraxen fleet, movements. Command codes. The MP sergeant stared, momentarily stunned by the direct telepathic contact from the prisoner. Recovering quickly, his suspicion returned. K'tharr deception. No deception, Lyra Xa projected, her gaze shifting to Rostova, then back to the MP humans. Rostova showed mercy. Honor. My code demands reciprocation. She winced from the effort. Information, for life. For honor. The rooftop was silent except for the low whistling wind. The MPs looked uncertainly at their sergeant. Rostova held her breath. Gryz slowly lowered the muzzle of his repeater. The MP sergeant stared at Lyra Xa, then at Rostova's unwavering stance, then at the rest of the squad who stood ready but not aggressive. He was clearly conflicted. His orders were clear, but the potential intelligence Lyra XA offered. K'tharr fleet movements and command codes were intelligence gold, potentially saving thousands of human lives. And the alien was offering it freely, citing the mercy shown by the very soldiers he was about to arrest. Valuable intelligence overrides field termination orders, Lee suddenly spoke up, quoting another section of the Mandate Wartime Code. Article 27, Section 8. Potential for high-value intelligence gain permits deviation from standing orders regarding enemy combatants, pending command review. The MP sergeant looked sharply at Lee, then back at Lyra XA, who met his gaze steadily. He seemed to be having an internal battle, his duty warring with pragmatism, and perhaps a flicker of something else. Finally, he lowered his sidearm slightly. "This changes things," he admitted gruffly. "But make no mistake, Sergeant Rostova, your actions will be subject to a full inquiry." He keyed his comms. Provost Marshal Detachment to Command. Situation update. Prisoner is conscious and offering actionable intelligence. Requesting immediate secure transport to Sector HQ Medical and Intelligence Division. Over. A voice crackled back after a moment, acknowledging the request and confirming a specialized intelligence transport was being rerouted to their location, ETA 15 minutes. The MP sergeant deactivated his comm. He looked back at Rostova's squad, then at Lyra XA. "All right, Sergeant. Your squad will escort the prisoner onto our shuttle under our supervision. We will proceed to Sector HQ together. You're not cleared yet, but for now, mission accomplished, after a fashion." Rostova allowed herself a small nod. They weren't out of the woods, but they had bought time, and more importantly, Lyra XA had a chance, both for survival and for her information to potentially make a difference. As Lee and Grizz carefully carried the stretcher towards the waiting dropship ramp, Lyra XA's gaze met Rostova's one last time. "Your code is strong," she projected, a faint trace of respect in the thought. "Perhaps not all humans are destroyers." Rostova offered no reply, just a steady look. The path ahead was uncertain, but for one night, on a war-torn alien world, humanity, in its most complex and compassionate form, had prevailed. The flight to Sector HQ was tense and silent. Rostova's squad sat opposite the MPs and their unconscious, or sleeping K'tharr prisoner, the humming of the Condor dropship the only sound. Lyra XA had been given a mild sedative by the MP medic once on board, both for her own comfort and for security. Rostova found herself studying the alien's face, the intricate scale patterns, the peaceful set of her usually fierce features in repose. It was hard to reconcile this vulnerable figure with the deadly warriors they fought every day. Upon landing at the heavily fortified Sector HQ, a whirlwind of activity enveloped them. A specialized med team, accompanied by stern-faced intelligence officers in sterile environment suits, met the shuttle. Lyra XA was transferred to a floating med stretcher and whisked away into the bowels of the medical facility under heavy guard. Rostova caught one last glimpse of her before she disappeared through reinforced blast doors. The Provost Marshal Sergeant formally logged his report, detailing the events, as he saw them: insubordination mitigated by potential intelligence gains. Rostova and her squad were escorted, not to the brig, but to a debriefing room. They spent the next 6 hours recounting the mission, from the initial sweep of the Spire to the encounter with the MPs, answering probing questions from intelligence officers, and a weary-looking Mandate legal officer. Rostova stuck to her story, garbled comms, adherence to Article 12, prioritizing casualty care. Lee backed her up regarding the comms interference and the patient's condition. Sharma confirmed the difficulty getting a clear signal. Grizz, surprisingly, offered grudging support, emphasizing the K'tharr's incapacitated state and mentioning her unexpected cooperation with the medical treatments. Carter provided concise, factual corroboration of the timeline, and environmental conditions. The legal officer listened patiently, occasionally consulting his datapad. "Sergeant," he said finally, his voice tired, "disobeying a direct order, even a potentially garbled one, is serious. Extremely serious. However..." He paused, rubbing his temples. "The intelligence Lyra XA, yes, we've confirmed her designation, began providing before formal interrogation even commenced, is significant. Very significant. She confirmed the location of a hidden staging ground for the Vraxan fleet reserves and provided partial access codes to their primary battle network." Rostova felt a surge of vindication, quickly suppressed. "She claims," the legal officer continued, looking directly at Rostova, "that she did this solely because you and your squad treated her with unexpected honor and mercy, upholding your own code even when ordered otherwise, and even when she herself provided the means to save her own life. Is this accurate?" "We treated her as mandated by our code for an incapacitated enemy, sir," Rostova replied carefully. "Her motivations for cooperating are her own." The officer sighed. "Politics and optics are messy things, Sergeant. Officially, command cannot condone disobeying orders. Unofficially..." He leaned forward slightly. "The intelligence she's providing may shift the balance in this entire sector. It might save thousands of lives. Terminating her, as ordered, would have been a catastrophic loss of opportunity." He sat back. "There will be consequences. A formal reprimand will be entered into your record." Sergeant Rostova, citing failure to adequately confirm potentially unclear orders resulting in deviation from tactical directives. "Your squad will receive counseling on communication protocols." He gave a wry smile. "Consider it a slap on the wrist disguised as paperwork." Rostova nodded, accepting the verdict. It was better than a court-martial. "Understood, sir." "One more thing," the officer said, his tone softening slightly. "Lyra XA is recovering well, thanks to your medic's initial stabilization, and her own species medical tech you utilized. She's under heavy security, but receiving the best care we can offer. Intelligence wants her alive and talking." He paused. "She asked specifically if Sergeant Eva Rostova was safe. Seems you made quite an impression." A complex emotion stirred in Rostova: relief, weariness, and a strange sense of connection to the alien warrior she had saved. Dismissed from debriefing, Reaper's squad found themselves temporarily billeted in the Sector HQ barracks. The atmosphere was subdued. They had faced combat, defied orders, navigated a deadly storm, encountered MPs, and somehow come out the other side, not unscathed, but intact. Later that evening, sitting on his bunk cleaning his repeater with meticulous care, Grizz spoke, his voice low. "Sarge, back there in the spire, when you decided to save her." Rostova looked up. "What about it, Grizz? I thought you were crazy. Suicidal, even. Risking us all for one of them." He shook his head, not looking at her. "They killed Davies right in front of me, you know. Skinned him. Still alive." Rostova nodded slowly. "I know, Marcus. But..." Grizz paused, carefully reassembling the plasma conduit. Seeing her, scared, hurt, and then, on the roof, offering up her own fleet to repay. He trailed off, then finished gruffly, maybe not all of them are just monsters. And maybe our rules mean something after all. Even when it sucks." He finally looked up, meeting Rostova's eyes. "You made the right call, Sarge. Even if command gives you hell for it." Coming from Grizz, it was the highest praise imaginable. A small smile touched Rostova's lips. "Thanks, Grizz." Lee and Sharma joined them, overhearing the end of the conversation. "That K'tharr medical tech was amazing," Lee mused. "Imagine the cross-species applications. And the telepathy. Sharma added, her earlier fear replaced by excitement. Can you imagine, Sarge? Understanding them without translators. War makes everything complicated, Rostova said quietly. Saving one enemy doesn't end the fighting. Her intel might help us win battles, but the war goes on. Peace, that's harder. But as she looked at her squad Lee's quiet competence, Sharma's resilient optimism, Carter's silent dependability, even Griz's grudging acknowledgement of a principle beyond hatred, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. They hadn't just saved an alien life, they had reaffirmed their own humanity in the face of inhumanity. The reprimand on her record felt insignificant compared to that. The ripples of their actions spread. The intelligence from Lyra XA led to a series of surgical strikes against the Vraxan fleet, crippling their reserve forces and forcing a strategic withdrawal from several key systems, including Xylos Prime. Thousands of human lives were undoubtedly saved. Lyra XA, eventually recovering, entered a lengthy, complex process of interrogation and potential repatriation negotiation, her unique status as a K'tharr who willingly cooperated, providing unforeseen diplomatic avenues. Reaper's squad eventually returned to the front lines, but they were changed. The memory of the Xylos night, the howling storm, the desperate gamble, and the unexpected connection forged with an enemy stayed with them. They fought on, still grimly efficient, but perhaps with a deeper understanding of what they were fighting for, not just territory or resources, but the very principles of the Terran Mandate, the messy, complicated, but ultimately vital core of humanity that valued mercy even, and especially, when it was hardest to give. Sergeant Rostova knew the war was far from over, but she also knew that holding onto that core, that mandate of mercy, was humanity's greatest strength, the one thing the enemy might never truly understand, and the one thing that might, eventually, lead to something more than just victory.